You're listening to Double Plus Media News. Double the news plus commentary. Associated Press. U.S. home prices surge 18.4% in October. U.S. home prices surged again in October as the housing market continues to boom in the wake of last year's coronavirus recession. The S&P CoreLogic Home Price Index climbed 18.4% in October from a year earlier. The gain marked a slight deceleration from a 19.1% year-over-year increase in September, but was about in line with what economists had been expecting. NBC. San Diego plane crash victims were medical crew working for air ambulance. Two flight nurses who were among 4 people who died when a small plane crashed into a San Diego suburb on Monday have been identified. The plane appeared to have been carrying a medical crew who work for an air ambulance company, Aero Medevac, which is based in El Cajon, according to early reports. NBC. Child severely burned attempting TikTok challenge. East Haven fire officials are issuing a warning after a child was severely burned while attempting a TikTok experiment called, quote, the whoosh bottle experiment. Firefighters responded to a call around 8:30 p.m. Tuesday for someone who had been burned. When they arrived, they learned a child was injured while attempting the experiment, which involves the use of alcohol in a bottle, which is then ignited to attempt to make a, quote, whoosh sound. CNN. Elon Musk owes a massive $11 billion in taxes after wrapping up his Tesla stock sales. Elon Musk appears to have wrapped up a busy year of trading his Tesla shares Tuesday. He'll end up with one of the largest tax bills in history. The Tesla CEO exercised options to buy another 1.6 million shares and sold 934,000 of those shares for $1 billion to cover the tax bite. The trades completed the exercise of the 22.9 million options he held that were due to expire in August. He sold off 10.3 million of the shares he acquired throughout the process to cover his tax withholding requirements. CBS News. Protesters call for firing of officer in fatal Florida dirt bike traffic stop. Demonstrators outside police headquarters in Boynton Beach, Florida, Tuesday night called for the firing of an officer involved in the death of a 13-year-old boy on a dirt bike during an attempted traffic stop Sunday. They also pressed for transparency from the department about what happened during the incident. Police say the boy was driving the dirt bike recklessly when he, quote, went down on North Federal Highway. BBC News. In China, public shaming returns amid COVID fears. Police in southern China have been captured on camera parading 4 alleged offenders through the streets in a public shaming exercise. The 4 men were accused of smuggling people across China's borders, which are largely sealed because of COVID. They were paraded through the streets in hazmat suits. The shaming drew mixed reactions online, including in state-owned media. Associated Press. Mexico approves use of Cuba's Abdala vaccine. Mexico's Health and Safety Council has approved the use of Cuba's 3-dose Abdala coronavirus vaccine. The council said Wednesday that it has sufficient evidence the vaccine is safe and effective. The approval for emergency use does not necessarily mean the Mexican government will require or administer the Abdala vaccine in Mexico. Mexico has approved 10 vaccines for use, but has made little use of some, like China's Sinopharm. CNN. CDC director explains new COVID-19 guidance as the U.S. heads into a harrowing phase of the pandemic. Sweeping new COVID-19 isolation and quarantine guidelines were spurred by scientific research and what Americans would likely tolerate. The director of the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention said Wednesday. They come as doctors expect the holiday coronavirus surge, driven by the highly contagious Omicron variant, to get worse following New Year's Eve. Anyone who tests positive for COVID-19, regardless of vaccination status, can stop isolating after 5 days if they don't have symptoms or if their, quote, symptoms are resolving. Associated Press. How democracy was dismantled in Hong Kong in 2021. Days of 2021 dwindled, so did any remaining traces of democracy in Hong Kong. On Wednesday, a vocal pro-democracy media outlet, one of the last openly critical voices in the city, closed after a police raid. Earlier in December, the opposition was shut out from elections under a new law that puts all candidates to a loyalty test, and monuments commemorating the Tiananmen Square protests of 1989 were taken down. The Atlantic. Russia's aggression against Ukraine is backfiring. Putin's military moves are rallying Ukrainians and unifying NATO. Vladimir Putin's government has already moved more than 100,000 troops along Ukraine's borders, including into Belarus. NATO countries might not fight for Ukraine, but they are likely to arm and train Ukrainians to fight for themselves. A Russian invasion would open the floodgates of Western support for Ukraine and activate similar mobilizations of civilian society among NATO frontline states. One News. UK DJ Dimension becomes New Zealand's first Omicron community case after breaking quarantine rules. An international music artist has been confirmed as the Omicron case that spent time in the Auckland community on Boxing Day and December 22nd. In a social media post late on Wednesday night, Dimension confirmed he had tested positive for the Omicron variant while in New Zealand. He said he was, quote, devastated by the news. France 24. Chinese officials admitted Wednesday that they have faced challenges getting enough supplies to residents in lockdown after the city's inhabitants took to social media to complain they didn't have enough food and call for help. 13 million residents in northern China are in their 7th day of home confinement, and national health officials have called for measures to be strengthened further as China battles its worst virus surge in months. Beijing has followed a strict, quote, zero COVID, unquote, strategy involving tight border restrictions and targeted lockdowns since the virus first surfaced in a central city in late 2019. DW. Kazakhstan abolishes death penalty. President of Kazakhstan has spared convicts sentenced to death in the authoritarian Central Asian nation. The former Soviet state has ratified a UN treaty against capital punishment. The president has signed a decree abolishing the death penalty in Kazakhstan, according to a statement released by his office on Saturday. Sky News. NSW Health Minister Brad Hazard tells the unvaccinated to, quote, switch off your social media and switch on reality, unquote. Mr. Hazard expressed his frustration with those who have not yet rolled up their sleeves for 2 doses of a COVID-19 vaccine during a media conference on Wednesday. Quote, I want to say this. We are still hearing that people are declining to get vaccinated. They know better. They are watching social media. Stop, forget it. Get off social media, unquote, he said. YLE. Finland introduces mandatory COVID vaccinations for healthcare workers if they are in close contact with elderly or at-risk patients. The motion was passed in Parliament by 107 votes to 32 and will see a temporary amendment added to the Communicable Diseases Act. ABC. Lawyers for Prince Andrew try to disqualify Virginia Jeffrey from civil lawsuit. A lawsuit by a woman who claims Prince Andrew sexually abused her when she was 17 in the United States could be thrown out because she no longer lives in the country, lawyers for the Duke of York say. Attorneys Andrew Brettler and Melissa Lerner wrote that they recently discovered Virginia Jeffrey had lived in Australia for all but 2 of the past 19 years and could not claim she was a resident of Colorado, where she has not lived since at least 2019. DW. Hong Kong. Police arrest 6 journalists. The government said the 6 senior journalists were former and current staff of an online media company. They have been arrested for, quote, conspiracy to publish seditious publications, unquote. Pro-democracy outlet Stan News has announced it will stop operating after police arrested several of its current and former staff. DW. Germany's long anti-nuclear protest ends. Activists have been protesting in front of the nuclear power plant in Brockdorf, northern Germany for 35 years, and their vigil is finally over. Protesters have gathered at the Brockdorf nuclear reactor every month since 1986. A small group of mostly elderly people have hung up a yellow banner on the guarded gate to the nuclear reactor which reads, quote, shut down nuclear power plant. Dawn.com. Apple puts India iPhone plant, quote, on probation after mass food poisoning. Apple said on Wednesday it has put the Indian plant of its main supplier, quote, on probation after a mass food poisoning and protests over workers' living conditions. Some 250 women working at Foxconn's iPhone factory in the southern India state of Tamil Nadu were treated for food poisoning this month, 159 of whom were hospitalized. This prompted demonstrations against living conditions at company hostels that have kept the factory closed since December 18th. The Hill. Russian court shuts down another human rights group. A prominent human rights group in Russia on Wednesday was ordered to shutter just a day after its sister organization was shuttered by the country's Supreme Court. The Memorial Human Rights Center will be forced to close after it faced charges of justifying terrorism and extremism and was ordered to liquidate in a court hearing. The liquidation of a larger group, International Memorial Society, was ordered on Tuesday in what appeared to be part of Russia's effort to eliminate dissent, as prosecutors argued that the group had violated Russia's policies on foreign agents. Reuters. Portugal daily COVID-19 cases hit new record, but deaths drop. Portugal reported a new record of 26,867 coronavirus cases over the last 24 hours on Wednesday, up sharply from 17,000 the previous day, although daily deaths dropped to a fraction of early 2021 peaks. Portugal has one of the world's highest COVID-19 vaccination rates with around 87% of its 10 million population fully inoculated, but the fast-spreading Omicron variant has caused the recent surge in cases, amplified by an increase in mass testing. Sky News. COVID-19, Boris Johnson says up to 90% in intensive care have not had a booster and urges people to get jabbed. Speaking to broadcasters, the Prime Minister said there are 2.4 million eligible double jab people yet to take up the offer of a booster, and that the overwhelming majority of those in a serious condition in hospital with COVID fall into this category. Reuters. China warns of drastic measures if Taiwan provokes on independence. China will take, quote, drastic measures if Taiwan makes moves towards independence, a Beijing official warned on Wednesday, adding that Taiwan's provocations and outside meddling could intensify next year. China claims democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory and in the past 2 years has stepped up military and diplomatic pressure to assert its sovereignty claim, fueling anger in Taipei and concerns in Washington. Reuters. Thailand warns of spike in COVID-19 cases after, quote, super spreader event. Thai health authorities warned on Wednesday that residents should brace themselves for a potential jump in coronavirus cases after classifying the country's first cluster of the Omicron variant as a super spreader incident. The Omicron cluster identified in the northeastern part of Kazakhstan on Christmas Eve has been linked to a couple who had traveled from Belgium and visited bars, concerts, and markets. The ensuing cluster had infected hundreds, with cases spreading to 11 other provinces, said senior health officials. NBC. UPS driver kidnapped, packages stolen in brazen Atlanta heist. Hijackers seized a UPS big rig, kidnapping its driver and stealing an untold number of packages during a brazen heist Tuesday in Atlanta, authorities said. The attack unfolded at about 3:30 a.m. Eastern when the UPS truck was stopped at a traffic light at Fulton Industrial Boulevard Northwest and Donald Lee Holloway Parkway Northwest, and a gunman got into the vehicle. That assailant then forced the UPS employee to drive to a secluded area near Holloway where, quote, the suspect along with others tied the victim up and stole cargo from the tractor trailer, unquote. Commentary. There was a story about the Proud Boys, and in that story there was an image with a description talking about the OK hand gesture being related to white supremacists. The authors of that story don't seem to understand that that hand gesture was just a meme. Also of note was needing to look towards avoiding buying from China, as the weaker situation there seems to be worsening and they're using forced labor for production of goods. A few COVID case stories were not included in this segment because they essentially could be boiled down to the numbers are increasing. The situation in Afghanistan seems to be continually deteriorating. I read more stories about women's rights issues as well as threats to allied Afghan nationals. Again, I'm still working on intonation and pacing. I'm looking to project a little more and improve my pronunciation and enunciation. Thank you for listening, and a double plus thanks to likes, comments, and subscribers.